doesn't wake you up, then nothing will. This is number 3 this week in the Radio 1 Fun 30 from the Move. It's called Flowers in the Rain.
Woke up one morning, half asleep, with all my blankets in a heap.
In 1967, The Move released a single that perfectly captured the spirit of the summer of love. It climbed to number 2 on the British charts and marked a milestone in broadcasting history. But behind its success lay an unexpected controversy. Shortly after the single was released, the band was sued by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. What began as a simple release became a cautionary tale at the crossroads of music, power, and reputation. Stick around, because you're about to hear how a hit song led to one of the most unexpected scandals in British music history. Let's begin. In August 1967, The Move released Flowers in the Rain. Its release in August coincided with Harold Wilson's Labour government passing of the Marine Offences Act, which effectively made pirate radio stations illegal.
Today's the day the singing has to stop. A moment of truth for Britain's pop pirates. Tonight at midnight, the Marine Broadcasting Bill comes into force.
Hello, this is Mick Jagger here, saying hello to Radio London. We're very sad to see you go. We hope to see you one day again. So you've given us a lot of good time. Thank you very much.
Big L time is 3 o'clock and Radio London is now closing down.
Oh, did you hear that? Oh, how is it? Oh, this is really... What are they going to do now?
But look, you just heard Radio London go off there. What do you think of it?
Yes, I think it's ridiculous,
Why?
really. Well,
Do you listen to it much?
yes,
What are you
yes,
going to do
all
now?
the time. I don't know. I suppose listen to the BBC instead, you know.
I'm not going to listen to BBC because
Why
they don't
not?
plug any good records.
We're never going to have to listen to the BBC. It's bound to be dead.
Okay, but if not, I don't think it'll be any good.
Well, they've got some of the pirate DJs going, I understand.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they will then. Give them a try anyway.
Woke up one morning, half asleep, with
At the time, the average age in Britain was just 27, and Prime Minister Harold Wilson was beginning to face growing hostility from those angered by the shutdown of pirate radio stations. The BBC launched Radio 1 to meet the demand for music generated by pirate radio and recruited some of the most popular pirate DJs such as Tony Blackburn, Kenny Everett or John Peel, among others. Flowers in the Rain achieved its place in pop history by being the first record to be played on Radio 1 when the station was launched on the 30th of September 1967.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the exciting new sound of Radio 1. If this one doesn't wake you up, then nothing will. This is number 3 this week in the Radio 1 Fun 30 from the Move. It's called Flowers in the Rain.
woke up one morning, half asleep, with all my blankets in a heap.
The Move's manager, Tony Secunda, was famous for his publicity stunts. Robert Davidson, who was the Move's photographer at the time, recalls,
His background was promoting wrestling matches. And so he'd come from that, and it was bums on seats. He would do anything to get a crowd in. And so every time we went out and did some pictures, he would come out with some extraordinary idea, usually verging on the illegal, immoral, or dangerous.
The Move continued to court controversy under the direction of Tony Secunda. But a promotional postcard printed and distributed by the manager without their knowledge would land them in bigger trouble than ever before. The offending postcard advertised the release of the Move's third single, Flowers in the Rain. It featured a cartoon of the then Prime Minister Harold Wilson, discovered by his wife in a compromising position with his secretary Marsha Williams.
He had 1,000 of these postcards done, and then he said, right, how are we going to distribute them, Robert? And I said, well, I'm not sure. And he said, well, let's go and find the most famous politician we can who lives locally. So we went in search of a gentleman called Michael Foot, who lived in Hampstead then. So we went and stalked him and went up to him and said, could you take these into the House of Parliament and distribute them amongst all the other politicians? And he said, well, and Tony said, come on, you can do it, Michael. And he said, well, yeah, I'll do that for you. And anyway, he went off with them. And Tony also sent them to anybody he could think of, any journalist going, TV, and did that without the Move knowing what was going on. The band hadn't got a clue.
The next day, newspaper headlines read, Pop band sued by Prime Minister for libel. Trevor Burton, the Move's guitarist, remembered,
we were playing down south somewhere, I can't remember which gig, but we came out of the gig and it was like being Elizabeth Taylor or something, you know. There's like, it must have been 100 photographers with flash bulbs going off and we didn't know why. And one of them, the guy said, "Oh, you've been sued by the Prime Minister." I said, "What?"
The Prime Minister sued, serving the group with an interim injunction, and the whole thing went to court a couple of months later, on October 11th, 1967.
The following day, there was a knock on the door about 9 o'clock in the morning, and these two gentlemen said, "Tony Secunda?" And he said, "Yes." And he said he's never been that frightened ever in his life. They had him up against the wall very rapidly and frightened him, saying, "You've been very naughty, you've upset the Prime Minister, Harold Wilson," and threatened Tony and said, "Listen, don't ever do that again." And then they put him down gently and walked away, and he rang me later and said, "Robert, they frightened me. I think this one might get a bit bigger."
On the day of the court case, Quintin Hogg QC acted for Harold Wilson. Ironically, he had been the man who spread the rumours about Wilson's affair with his secretary in the first place, alluding to them in Parliament some 3 years earlier. Tony Secunda had hired a Rolls-Royce for the day, which had broken down on the M1 on its way down from Birmingham. They were running late and had missed the proceedings.
Well, no, we went to court, but we were late getting there, so it was all over when we got there.
Well, how the time we got there?
About 25 to 11.
So you missed Mr. Quintin Hogg's dress?
So.
Well, then, if the promotion for this record was a publicity stunt, as some people are saying, it's been a pretty expensive one for you.
Oh, it wasn't a publicity stunt. How can anybody suggest it was? You know, Wilson started legal proceedings. We did it as a cartoon. Remember that? It's a cartoon. It wasn't intended to be anything but that.
Carl Wayne was holding a book by Timothy Leary, Turn On, Tune In, Drop Out. Acid had arrived. When asked about their political standpoint, Carl Wayne said,
We've no faith in any political sides at all. We vote for people like Frank Zappa, Jimi Hendrix, and anybody.
The court found Tony, the publisher, the cartoonist, Neil Smith, the band and anybody else involved, guilty. Quintin Hogg described the postcard as scurrilous, making use of malicious rumours concerning the Prime Minister's character and integrity. He also criticised the decision to send it to journalists, television producers and music publishers. The band were ordered to apologise to the Prime Minister for spreading false and malicious rumours concerning his character, and to pay all profits from the Flowers in the Rain single to charities of Wilson's choosing, including Stoke Mandeville Hospital, where Jimmy Savile was jolly busy, and the Spastic Society, now called Scope. The royalties for both sides of the record were to be paid in perpetuity, forever. This agreement would cost the band more dearly than they could have imagined. At the time, lost revenue was estimated at anything from £2,000 to £8,000. 20 years after the event, Roy Wood complained that he was losing hundreds of thousands of pounds. By now, it is estimated that he could have lost millions in royalties. The band were already divided over Secunda's tactics, but the court case created a rift that never healed. The move seemed poised for bigger and better things, and the big stars of the time were taking notice. In an interview that year, Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones said, "I'd like to see the move. They are really an extension of our idea of smashing conventions. Those kind of smash-ups they have, destroying TVs, cars and all that, are all part of dissatisfaction with convention." Paul McCartney reviewed their I Can Hear the Grass Grow single for Melody Maker and said, "I haven't actually seen them live or anything, but the reports I hear are very good. They sound good. They look good. It just depends how they're handled in the meantime and how they look after themselves." Pete Townsend from The Who was also aware of the move. "I've liked what I've heard about them and what they do," he said. "I think they've got the same sort of following that we used to have in the old days when we played at the Marquee, and that's the kind of fans that they deserve. The best, faithful." According to photographer Robert Davidson,
they were this brilliant band who then slowly, bit by bit, chunks started to fall off. Secunda left, the producer fell away. Ace Kefford, who was a paranoid person at the best of times, wonderful musician, a fantastic icon, but he crumbled under the strain of the fallout of the court case. The blonde, beautiful, weak link in the chain is kind of the one who's the sacrificial lamb, and poor old Ace, he was the one who fell in spring '68 and ended up in a mental hospital.
Pushing boundaries even further, the move considered releasing Cherry Blossom Clinic, a provocative track set in a mental institution. They planned to release it with Vote For Me on the B-side. But with Vote For Me seen as another pointed swipe at Harold Wilson and the political establishment, it was considered a step too far. The single was pulled, and the Move parted ways with their manager, Tony Secunda.
Remember, we were only kids, really were, and we were terrified. James Bond movies were very big at the time, and we swear that there were Secret Service guys, and we even thought they'd be like, we could be shot, they could be picked off by a sniper or something. We were pretty scared. We were kids from Birmingham, down in London, and suddenly, we were being pursued by all the paparazzi. You're being sued by one of the most powerful men in the world, and we were just like lambs to the slaughter, really. We didn't know what the hell was going on.